How's it going? I'm Ryan, and today I'm going to go over the 3 trades I took on QQQ. All 3 of them were losers. Some of the trades were better than others. We'll go into each individual trade in just a second. Right now we're on the daily time frame. Monday we set an all-time high. So yesterday had a bit of a pullback. Today we're in that same range. So a few of the levels I was watching were yesterday's high and low, and the pre-market high and low. So we'll remove this for now, and we'll look at the EMA here. So my first trade of the day, we opened up with QQQ. Pre-market rejected off that pre-market high, came down, and off the open sold off really aggressively. Looked pretty weak. We did have a bounce here, and we came up and approached that 9 EMA. When we wicked up and started rejecting off that 9 EMA, forming this weak candle on lowering volume after that bounce, I took a put here. So I took a single put. To me, this looked like a continuation. Looked like we were going to reject off the EMA. Had a pretty long upper wick, volume dropped pretty significantly, and then we'll look at the 2-minute as well, and we'll take a look at why I thought we'd get a rejection here as well based off the 2-minute. But everything looked pretty decent. I only took one contract here because it was close to the open. We hadn't established a direction yet, and it was simply a rejection off the EMA and then looking at volume and price. So there wasn't a level here. So not maybe all the confirmation that I would typically want. When we look at the 2-minute chart here, this is that action here. So you can see we have, and this would have been a better trade here, been to take calls after the test and holding of the pre-market low. That would have been an excellent place to take calls. I missed that, however. But we came up and we had this rejection. So we have decreasing volume as we were rejecting off that EMA. So that EMA was right up in here. We had these long upper wicks, and I entered right here on this retest. So we had rejected and closed lower off that EMA, and we pushed up and retested, and I entered one put here. When we were pushing down here, I was up around probably a little over 10%. I did not take that. I was looking for another continuation down to yesterday's low a day. So I was targeting about 421.2. So another 40 cents or so from where we were here. We pushed up and this stopped me out. So once we broke above that, we broke above the EMA. I believe it was at the top of this candle or somewhere in this candle that broke me out officially or stopped me out. So that trade was my first loss. Overall, not the greatest because I didn't wait for any sort of trend to establish. We weren't at a level that I was watching. So those could be seen as negatives. Also, partially why I didn't size too strong into this position. I kept it a single contract. I was expecting it to be kind of a quick reversal and a scalp that I would take. So overall, maybe not the greatest trade here. The second trade that I took was based off of the resistance that I removed earlier. So when we were bouncing off of previous low of day yesterday and kind of that zone between the pre-market low, we had formed this resistance here on the 2-minute, and then you can tell us on the 5-minute as well. Oh, this is the wrong day. Apologize. That confused me for a second. So on the 5-minute as well, you can tell that resistance. My second trade of the day was on the retest of this resistance here. I took puts. I got stopped out, even though you see that we did have a fake out and we did get continuation back down to the bottom of that range. That would have been what I was looking for. But the second and third trade of the day that I took revolve around this action right here. So on the 2-minute, you see we break out, and this breakout stopped me out. So we had increasing volume on that breakout. And then I waited for this pullback to retest. I figured we'd probably retest this trend line. So once we were pulling back to retest, I stopped out of my contracts to try to minimize my loss there. That was my second trade. My third trade was taking calls on the retest here. Reason being, we had increasing volume as we broke out. I don't know why it's not letting me draw. We had decreasing volume as we retested. So broke out on increasing volume, came back and retested and held on decreasing selling volume. So I thought that, hey, maybe this is the move we're going to get. We've been kind of choppy all day. We've broke out of this resistance that's been hitting us all day. We retested on lower volume. Everything looks like we might continue to push up. I think the thing that I was kind of failing to realize is that we did have this zone here that we'd been rejecting off of. And even if I want to extend this into the open that we opened at and rejected off of, this was a zone that we could not break out of. So even though we had broken out of this resistance, we still had this zone ahead of us. So probably shouldn't have looked at taking calls in this area until we had showed some strength in here. So that's something I sort of ignored. I was focusing more on this trend line. So I got faked out on the breakout. That stopped me out, took calls, and this stopped me out. I did take one call. I took two calls, took profit on one when we pushed up here, just because that was the area that we rejected. And I wasn't feeling so great about my position at the time, even though we did have an increase in volume on that green bar. So everything was looking all right at this moment. But I wanted to de-risk, having had two losers already. When we came down here and broke through this, stopped out my remaining contract, and that was my third trade of the day. Overall, no trades today were very large, so I did take 3 separate losses, and none of them were big losses. So overall added up to a bigger losing day than I'd like to have, but certainly one that's pretty manageable when I consider the fact that it took 3 trades to get to that amount. So not the greatest trading. This retest here, I wish I would have had a bit more patience and held a bit longer and maybe paid attention to that 5 minute, because the 5 minute still reads pretty well with those long upper wicks into this area that we were rejecting off of up in here. So probably could have had a bit more patience here, maybe entered a single contract here, entered another when we entered this area, scaled in up here. Would have been a much better trade plan. But you see we did kind of revert back down to that area that we'd been bouncing from. So that trade, the idea was there. I just didn't execute it super well. My second trade was probably my best trade of the day, and I just didn't execute. I let myself get shaken out of it before the move happened. Third trade was just kind of a response to that. Overall, not the greatest day. It was pretty difficult to trade. We had a lot of chop. The reason why I traded QQQ is we'll take a look at SPY, and you can see what SPY was doing during all that. SPY was looking like this, so pretty horrendous as well. Not the best day to trade. You could get some trades for sure. We had some areas that we'd bounced from. We had some areas that we rejected from. You could certainly scalp it, but it looks like a bit of a inverse head and shoulders here on SPY that we broke out of there. But those are the trades I took. That's all I have for you. Not the best day, but we kept it manageable, so we'll move on. Thank you for watching. I do trade live every Monday through Friday, so if you feel so inclined, stop by, hang out, say what's up. I'd love to have you. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. All right, peace.